It's allemaal in English. Allemaal komen hier nou. Okay. Good afternoon. I don't know if you know how this session is called. It's the graveyard shift. Yeah, because everybody has eaten. I hope everybody has eaten, and then okay, just give it to me. That's. My name is Pedro De Bruyckere. If you're wondering what language is I'm speaking, we call it Flenglish. Flemish English. It's a variation of Dunglish, Dutch English. All mistakes are mine, sorry for that. For the people who were in a session before lunch, get out, because it's the same, but then I did it in a version of Dutch. I've written 2 books. One book is Urban Myths about Learning and Education. I wrote together with Casper, who gave a talk an hour ago about Star Trek. Yeah, we're that kind of people. And it's about myths about learning and education. But one of the biggest questions that came after the book was, yeah, but can you tell us what works? And then I said no. But people kept asking the same question. Can you tell us what works? And I said, yeah, but there are already a lot of books about what works. So I haven't written a book about what works. I've written about what could work sometimes, when it works, when it doesn't work, and why. And for me, this is the book, the ingredients for great teaching. I was a bit upset with the title because I didn't want to have the, but then they said, yeah, but then you won't sell any book. Okay. And it isn't out yet, so you get the first talk in English about this book. Yay! It will be out, it will be published or on sale in March. Okay, you can already buy it on Amazon, but they won't ship it. And you know why? Because I still have to read the proofs. And no, in education, the child and the pupil is the most important, and the worst thing a person can do is bring a pupil back to a figure or to a statistic. That's why I will discuss the following numbers. This is my talk. I'll be discussing 90, I will be discussing 205 trillion, then I'll discuss 8, then I'll talk about 2, then I have 352,000, 3 out of 4, and 2. These are the topics I will discuss today, if that's fine with you. Is there something that you want to have another statistic to discuss? Oh, no, 42. No, that was the best. Who knows why he said 42? Yeah.
The answer to everything in the universe.
Yeah. You know who hates this answer? My oldest son. Because every single time he asks me a question that I don't know the answer for, I say, oh, 42. He hates me. Let's not go into details about why my son hates me. Let's start off with 90. And this is actually from the previous book, but I needed to explain the 205 trillion. A question I often get when people have read the Urban Myth book, they ask me, I don't know why, but they like to ask me, what's your favorite myth? That's like, what's your favorite disease? That's a strange question. But I have to admit, I have one favorite myth. It's the one myth that took 4 weeks of my life. And it's this one. The learning pyramid. For the people who don't know it, never share it again. I'll give you a brief story about it. I just tried to figure out who made it, who did research. I checked the many sources. If you would plan to use it, there's only one name to use. It's Edgar Dale. And this is not a joke. I'm a big admirer of Edgar Dale. You know why? In 1946, he sat down at his desk and wrote one of the oldest theories on multimedia usage in the classroom. in 1946. I think that's amazing. But in his case, it was a theory without any percentages. The oldest source we found for the percentages is 1912, and they were totally made up. And the combination between the statistics and the shape, the code of experience from Edgar Dale, the combination was made probably in 1968 or 69 by an HR manager of a Texan oil company. You don't want to know how we know that, but we found out that probably, well, that guy did it, made the, and it's totally wrong. Lally Miller has explained this in 2007 when the real first research happened on period. This was the short explanation, but I want to tell this, I want to show this for another reason. Imagine this being correct. What does it say? It says there's one approach that will work best for any given subject, any given goal, in any given context, for every child. This is what this says. Teacher training will last only 1 week, because you only need one approach to learn. Is teaching that simple? I'm afraid not. Actually, I rebrand this as the Loch Ness Monster of Education. But if we look at the story, I think it's good news, it's wrong, because that's why we need you. And it's the opposite of one size fits all. And if you want to know the harsh reality, education is really messy. They didn't get this one in the Dutch version. Yeah, it's the only, this is a joke you only can make in English. That's why it's included this. But imagine, for instance, sir, you're a teacher?
Yes.
Imagine, you have a break this evening, but tomorrow evening, like every single teacher, you start preparing a new lesson, a new class. And you have a white Word document or a white piece of paper before you. How many options do you have?
Trillion.
No, 205 trillion. You have to pay attention. I've given every answer already, you know. No, actually, in 2013, they did some really mathematicians. You know, they try to calculate how many options, no, even better, how many working options you have as a teacher. 205 trillion. Now you understand why I say I won't write a book about what works. I don't have enough time in my life to describe everything that works, because almost everything works sometimes, but nothing works all of the time. Dylan William, but I changed a bit, because he says everything works sometimes. I don't think so. There are some stuff that never works. So not everything works and nothing works all of the time. And I want to explain this by an example of 8 possible reactions. Explain this. You're all familiar with the concept of meta-analysis? Who isn't familiar with this concept? Okay. Well, do you have something yourself? I'll explain to you. No, maybe I'll explain to everybody, because I think it's relevant for everybody to know this. First, let's do this because it's Saturday with something you can use in your daily life. 1 week you will read a newspaper. Drinking 1 glass of red wine a day is good against cancer. What will you read 2 weeks later? Oh, you get a heart attack and it's really bad for cancer. And then you say, yeah, but science can say everything. Now, I have an overview for you of everything that's good and bad, food-wise, for cancer. So now you will know. Conclusion, everything is good and bad for cancer. Except, well, red meat, that's not that good. And often people think, yeah, but maybe there are some dodgy studies in this. No, actually, every single study in this overview is a really good, valid research. And how come there are differences? Well, you know the story about the seven blind men and the elephant? That's often the case with research. And that's why we have the meta-analysis, where we take all the studies, recalculate it, and try on average, and that's a key word, what will work. Now, there is one guy who doesn't have a life. He's from New Zealand. And he made a meta-analysis. And that's John Hattie. People wonder why when I sleep, I'm sure I sleep more than him. But you get this, if you have a negative effect, it's lower than 0, then developmental effects between 0 and 0.15, 0.15 to 0.4, average teaching. Okay. Nice, but wait. Because what you just saw about the heart attacks or the cancer is also happening here. For instance, if you look at web-based learning, you get an average effect size of 0.18. Not that good at all. But if you look what's behind the 0.18, you get this. And then you see there are some studies with a real bad effect of web-based learning. But there are also studies with an enormous positive effect. It's not that simple. And I have to give credit to John Hattie. Most of those nuances are in the book. But nobody reads it, it seems. We only look at the drawings and at the figures. But for instance, if you read that feedback is important because it has an effect size of 0.73, then you now know that behind this average, there are also examples of feedback with even a negative effect. It's not that easy. But imagine, you give the perfect feedback. We can fill it because you're the best teacher giving feedback ever. I don't want to look at anybody, but he or she is in this room. And you give feedback on the right moment. Not too soon, not too late, because also that has an effect. And not too much. Because if you give too much feedback, the learning will become less. Then the question is, will the student have learned anything? You already guessed it, the answer will be no, otherwise I wouldn't be asking it. Well, Dylan William has described there are 8 possible reactions to feedback. You've done a hell of a job, but there's still a pupil involved. Damn. And for instance, you have said something in line that the objectives were more than adequately reached, great, and the reaction of the student is, the pupil will try less hard to do his or her best. I'm good. Is this what you wanted? Not really. Actually, there are only 2 of the 8 possible reactions that mean more learning. In 6 other cases, your pupil will learn less. Who's depressed yet? Now, I've explained 8 and 2. But it also shows how important it is to keep looking at your students. Even if you are doing a great job, there's a big chance that still a lot of pupils won't have learned anything. Even if you're doing it the best possible way, you need to check. That's the importance of formative assessment. Let's discuss this. 352,000. Imagine that I want to do a research, a study, and I don't want to take a group of students. You know what? Let's take all students of the Netherlands. All. And we'll do this. Every school will get a directive how to teach. And we have 8 or 9 approaches, and we'll randomly divide them around the country. And we say, you have to teach this way, you have to teach this way. And then we will follow each student for 10 years. Well, 2 things will happen. 1, you won't find an ethical committee to agree with this. and it will cost a lot of money. 3, it did happen. Who has heard about Project Follow-Through before? 1 person? 2? Project Follow-Through is actually the study I just described. And they had 352,000 pupils involved, which they followed for 10 years. Yeah, and it lasted between 1967 and 1977, and is the largest and most expensive, guess why, experimental project in education. And do you want to know the results? Well, these are the results. Here you have direct instruction, and you have great results for reading, math, spelling, and language. Here you have open education. Wow, that's a problem. That we now discuss direct instruction is a direct result of this crazy study. But that's so old, maybe things have changed. Let's have a look at PISA 2015, published December 5th or 6th, December 5th, 2016. I'll blow this up so you can read it more easily. But if you're left of the center, then you have a bad result. It's bad for learning. Right side is good for learning. Well, what's bad for learning, sciences in this case, inquiry-based instruction. And then this is the conclusion. Oops. And if you want to have a positive effect, you get teacher-directed instruction and adaptive instruction, which is very close to direct instruction. Now, wait a minute. If you recall what I've been saying, you don't expect me now to say direct instruction is the only thing that works, because it doesn't. That's why it's much more important to ask this question. Why was it dismissed? Well, I guess it's a kind of paradigm discussion, but why is this? It's a much more important question. And that's why I want to do a little experiment with you. First question, is there any psychologist in the room? Student? Close enough? You are? Yeah. Do you know the Wesen test?
Sorry?
The Wesen test, do you know it? Wesen. No? Does anybody else know the Wesen test? If you recognize the test, I have one question. Please shut up. For all the other people in the room, I have one advice. Do it by yourself, because know for sure your neighbor will be wrong. And I'll give you 2 chances. I will do it twice, just to see if you're smart enough. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Thank you. You don't have a chance, a choice, so let's do this. I give you 4 cards. A card with the letter A on it, a letter D on it, number 4, number 7. Do you see the 4 cards? Yeah. Otherwise it becomes very difficult. Okay, now I tell you if there is a letter on one side, you'll get a number on the other side, and vice versa. So behind the A there's a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Behind the 4 there's a letter. Okay. Now, which cards do you, the minimum amount of cards, do you need to turn over in order to determine if this rule is true or false? If a card has a vowel on one side, A, O, U, and so on, then it has an even number, 2, 4, 6, on the other side. Which cards do you need to turn over? And how many? Who only needs 1 card? Who needs 2 cards? Who needs 3 cards? Who's wondering, what's this about? Okay, who will flip the A? Yeah. Who will flip the D? Some people. Who will flip the 4? Who will flip the 7? Less. Okay. In perfect conditions, you're alone in a room with real cards. Research has shown over and over again that 8 out of 10 people will flip A and 4. And this is incorrect. Because the correct answer is A and 7. And now, frustrating for you, I won't explain why, because first you get your second chance. Do better, please. Let's go to a bar. Oh, now I see people. Oh, it's getting interesting, more interesting. Good. You enter a bar and you see 4 people at the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they all look very young. One, you, is drinking a beer, but you don't know how old she is. Number 2 is drinking a Coke, but he looks very young, but you don't know how old he is. Then 1 is 35 years old. She's really pleased. But you don't know if she's drinking a beer or a Coke. You don't know it. And number 4 is 16 years old. She's also almost okay. But is she drinking a beer or a Coke? You don't know. But you are very responsible people because you're in education. No alcohol allowed, under 18, or you have to move to Belgium. That's true. For the 4 people, who will you ask how old he or she is, or what he or she is drinking, to know if a man is drinking a beer, then he must be 18 years old, the rule has been. Who will ask the person drinking a beer how old she is? Yep. Who will ask the person drinking a Coke how old he is? 2. Who will ask the 35 years old if she's drinking a beer? 1. Who will ask the 16-year-old if she's drinking a beer? In perfect conditions, you're alone in a room and there's enough oxygen, everything is perfect. 9 out of 10 will choose 1 and 4. And this is correct. But have you noticed something? Yeah, but the exercise is the same. And first you get a lot of people answering incorrectly. And if I change the examples, most of you have it correct. What has happened? Heek 2009